Thank you once again, Chris, for the opportunity to share with you what I'm going to present now. I'm going to try and make sure that I don't get the red light, Chris. What is it that I'm going to address? This is what I'm going to cover. What is the problem? Why do land reform projects fail and what can be done? What model can be used to reduce risk and enhance results? What results can be achieved? We're proposing a fund, and why is a fund needed? And about the fund, and I'll have just a parting shot on expropriation of land without compensation. Land reform promises to provide assets to the poor, stabilize relationships, and create employment and income. The National Development Plan suggests that agriculture alone has the potential to create in excess of 1 million new jobs. Over 100,000 of those jobs, it suggests, can be created by making better use of land already transferred under the land reform program. The high failure rate of land reform projects, on the other hand, we've talked about it earlier on. The basic point to make here is a substantial number of land reform projects actually fail. Now, the promised rapid expansion of land reform has the potential to capitalize on the promise of new employment and income, or destroy jobs and dent South Africa's job creation hopes. There's no enough data to calculate this, but we think the expanded restitution program alone could result in the loss of 500,000 jobs, or the saving of those jobs and the creation of a further 250,000. Now, why do land reform projects actually fail, and what can be done? I know that I'm talking to the converted, but when people are really dispossessed of their land, they not only lose the land, they lose access to capital, they lose the skills, they lose markets, they lose networks, entrepreneurship, etc. Now, restoration of land without access to these other factors that are important for production leaves communities really very stranded, and the production on the land collapses. And we all know these factors of production, including access to finance, access to market, etc. Now, what is it that can be done? We are advocating that forging partnerships with third parties who have the resources is the most immediate way to address that challenge. You can sit here and try and hammer the financial services sector and hammer the banks to say banks must transform. And these are big elephants that we are talking about. But we are arguing to say forging partnerships is almost an immediate way of addressing this challenge. Now, these partnerships do not just form spontaneously because the risks are perceived to be high. I must say, the presentation over the last few days have actually shown that there are many players in this room who are conscious of this risk, but are actually willing to take these risks. And this is where the power of partnerships actually come into picture. Now, a risk reduction mechanism is required that will enable partnerships to form in a way that attracts private capital and links land reform communities to the skills, to the networks and markets they require to be productive. I'm going to rush through this slide. This busy slide is really, we are saying a model has already been piloted by Vumelana over the last 5 years or more to lower the risk by providing skills, transaction advisors on the other hand, to facilitate sustainable agreements. You've got the communities on the one hand who've got land, labor, and knowledge. On the other end of the spectrum, you've got the investors, many of whom are actually here, who've got capital or access to capital, who've got the requisite skill set, and who've got access to the market. Now, the trick is to actually get these two parties to work together. The truth is they don't know each other communities look at these investors with a bit of suspicion. On the other hand, investors look at the communities and say, look, this is risky because I'm going to try and get involved with these people, and then the next thing, they ban the properties, etc. This is where we actually come in. As Vumelana would enter into an agreement with the community to say we will assist them and actually agree to pay the services of transaction advisors who normally have deal facilitation skills, financial and community facilitation skills. They would assist the community on an investment mobilization program, and the community, in order to have a buy-in from the community, you'll have to involve them, and then they will go into a mobilization process and get the investor. The investor is free to walk away anytime if the deal doesn't materialize, and Vumelana carries the risk, i.e. we will pay the cost that the transaction advisors actually incurred if the deal is not successful. However, if the deal is successful, then the investor has to repay the cost incurred, transaction advisory cost that we would have incurred in assisting and supporting that deal. And once this amount has been repaid, we would have done an assessment initially to understand the needs of this community. Then we will reapply some of what we would have actually recovered to address things like ensuring that we address things like governance, to make sure that they've got policies and procedures in place, to make sure that they can start communicating effectively with their fellow beneficiary members, and broadly to make sure that there's transparency, because our observation has been that where you do not have transparency, where there is weak leadership, you are likely to have problems. And it's for that reason that we think, and we've tended to really concentrate on ensuring that we capacitate beneficiary communities once we've helped them to actually secure investments. In terms of, with the limited funding that we had, the pilot has shown that deals can be supported, investment can be attracted, and jobs can be created, and those figures there really is a demonstration of what we've done over the last 5 years. And this excludes what Vumelana would have been. Remember, Vumelana is a legacy project of the erstwhile Business Trust. And during back then, I mean, we are talking of in excess of 2 billion rands worth of private investment that was actually brought into some of these projects. So we are saying there's ample evidence, there's ample really examples that we can learn from. And those are the figures. I'm not going to waste time on that. And I mean, the projects that we've supported range from agriculture, tourism, forestry, and we've got those who are concluded and those that are in progress. Why is the fund needed? We have to meet the unrecovered cost, aborted projects, because we all know that in this environment, some of the projects are bound to fall through the cracks. Now, that's why you need a fund. One or the other parties or a government agency acts in a way that makes completion unviable. Community capacity building, all community partners require capacity building. So transaction fees recovered from investors, as I've said, they are reapplied in turn to capacity building. Can expand on the impact. We've, as I've said, had about 16 projects that we've concluded to date. And we believe that with the rapid increase in land transfer, the need will actually increase. And we anticipate a tenfold increase. We can save 15,000 jobs or even more, and we can create in excess of just 7,500 jobs. About the fund, the estimation, discretionary funding of around 120 million required and can support 150 really big projects, which the potential to create in excess of 22,500 jobs, depending on the attrition rate. While focus has been on restitution projects to date, this could include both redistribution projects as well as land tenure. Potential sources, funding must be focusing on transaction advisory and support services, could be funded through aid agencies, budgets, government, and CSI funds. We have developed considerable experience in managing such a fund, covering both management, investment of funds, oversight, coordination, governance, evaluation of these projects, and most importantly, communication with stakeholders. Now, to get to my parting shot, prediction is expropriation of land without compensation will end with an agreement, an amendment that makes much of what is already available more explicit and provide for expropriation without compensation, hopefully under defined circumstances, and I've made some examples there. Compensation assessment will be based on just and equitable principle and determined by the courts. Application should be limited to land reform, and there should be regulation, i.e. by appropriate legislation setting out procedures, powers of the state, rights of landowners and beneficiaries, and most importantly, being subject to judicial review. I'm saying all of this just to demonstrate that for some of you who might have been involved in legislative processes and policy formulation, you'd agree with me that to get to a point where we've got legislation, let alone regulations to ensure the operationalization of that of the said piece of legislation, is going to take a while, given the fact that this is a highly contested space. So there's merit in ensuring that we make sure that we start addressing the problem, we make sure that we can demonstrate that as a sector we can deal with the current challenges. And my last slide really here is a caveat. Constitutional change will not resolve major issues, meaning we'll still be sitting with the problems that we've always had. And we argue that restitution processes have to be simplified. We need to find quick means of managing financial settlements so that we don't end up losing jobs in the process. Communal property institutions need to be better regulated. Mechanisms are needed to cut through intra-community disputes. Restriction on access to capital have to be removed. We need to look at creative ways through which we can fund land reform. Redistribution procedures must be more transparent. Tenure reform must address the rights of millions of families in communal areas. We've had some wonderful stories on communal areas. The rights of families must be prioritized over politicians, developers, and chiefs. Post-settlement support must be expanded. When you are dispossessed of land, you lose much more than the land. Resources must be enhanced. Budget must increase. We all know what is the budget for land reform currently. Budget must increase. Institutional capacity needs to be built across all spheres of government. And the last slide really is about us as a fund. We've got our board of directors and the contact information. Thank you.